What if you could help others to find the power to heal themselves? Physically, emotionally, and spiritually.
When I started teaching my classes, it was in 2002, and I was just doing the past life regressions and contacting the subconscious part. But then as the time went on and we found how powerful this was and what we could do with it, a lot of the students began saying, you know, advanced past life regression doesn't really tell what it's all about. This is so much more than that. We think you should change the name. So it was a few years ago we decided to change the name to Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique. And this is the healing technique that we've now been teaching it, well, since 2002, that's 12 years.
What if you could time travel with them? Visit mythical places or angelic realms, other worlds, other galaxies. Help others to speak to their higher selves. You can. Dolores has taught thousands of people from across the world how to use QHHT, and now you can learn her method by going directly to dolorescannon.com. And don't forget to mention the discount code MORETALKS. Hi guys, and welcome to another edition of The Kevin Moore Show. Now on today's show, I'm about to be joined by my guest, Emery Smith. Now Emery is a US Air Force veteran with a long history of assignments in highly classified, deep black covert operations. He states he's been directly involved in autopsying and collecting tissue samples of over 3,000 different species of extraterrestrial. Now additionally, he says he has personally witnessed multiple crashed UFOs in possession of the military and has studied their composition and operational characteristics. Now I met Emery at Contact in the Desert in June of 2018 this year, and I got a chance to sit down with him for a very short interview. So enjoy my conversation with Emery.
Hi, my name's Emery Smith. I was part of some compartmentalized programs in the United States Air Force that led me to the investigation of over 3,000 different specimens being dissected and analyzed. And this led me into a different field, of course, of regenerative medicine and also physics and extraterrestrials, and also UFOs, as the pop culture term is called.
So tell me about your experience of some of the extraterrestrials that you actually worked with.
Well, it's a beautiful experience and a very honor to have worked with amazing beings from other systems. But what's interesting is, after working in the genetic labs with these different types of beings and also testing our own DNA, I've actually come to the realization that we have a lot of extraterrestrial DNA in ourselves. So the connection between that is the most amazing thing as far as a frequency and energetic capability, because you're talking to someone who has been there, done that, 1 billion years ahead of you. And what I'm getting at is these beings and these extraterrestrials of the planet actually were us at one time. They just evolved into a higher state of consciousness, where they're not chopping each other's heads off or, distinguishing, horrible things because of our race or our color and our gender. Everyone is accepted in the future because they move beyond that. So they're very compassionate when they meet us and they talk to us and when they work with us, and they're very comical, actually, as well.
That's interesting. So, okay, so they're a version of where our potential can go in the future. But I mean, you're talking about multiple species, aren't you? Contact with multiple species?
I'm talking about unlimited multiple species, and don't ask me a number because that's what everyone asks. It's like, well, how many are there? That's like saying how many grains of sand are there on the planet?
When did this take place? What years were you working with these beings?
From August of 1990 to probably October of 1995 was my active duty service, and in the projects for that long. I did 2 years of reserve after that, and then 2 years of inactive reserve. So a total of 5.5, 6.5, 7.5, 8, 9.5 years total.
9.5 years. Well, that must have changed you very much as a person then. I mean, that's not a normal experience, is it?
No, it wasn't, but I was, no, sorry, I've been talking for so long, my voice is squeaking. No, it's not a normal thing, of course, to experience what I've experienced, and it's hard to, explain this to the masses. And I am doing this to bring other insiders out to, of course, back up, all the stuff that is going on like this. I am not just one person on the planet who has experienced this. There's hundreds and hundreds and even thousands of people like myself who were part of these projects that were working with extraterrestrials and working with the genetics programs, hand in hand. We were evaluating the devices that were brought in daily, many devices daily brought in from, crashed craft in exo-atmospheric conditions, bodies being brought in, ships and crafts being brought in that were all tied together because some of the craft were actually genetically made after the owners of the pilots of these craft. It's consciousness assisted technology.
It's funny you say that. I was with Philip Colonel Corso's son in Florida 2 weeks ago, and he told me that the craft that landed there was a time ship apparently. It landed in 1947, and the other remnants of it landed 10 years later in Corona. Not sure which Corona, but he said that the craft was conscious.
One of my first experiences on one of the craft in these projects was very over emotional because I grew up on a farm with a lot of animals, and I was telepathic at a very young age. I was visited by ETs at the age of 7, and I was able to look into the eyes of many beings and able just to transmit these telepathic communications, not based on emotion, by the way, which is a whole other language that ETs communicate with. And I knew right then that, wow, there's a lot going on here that not everyone else knows about.
Well, how do you know you've not been altered in some way?
Definitely probably have been altered for sure.
The vibe I get from you is there's something else with you.
Exactly. Well, during these projects, I could not work on some extraterrestrial bodies because I was not at the same frequency, so I had to get inoculations. And I know that sounds really barbaric right now, but when you're 19 years old and you're trying to make an extra $1,000 a month, and you're been asked to do these projects after hours of working, it's a very addictive process because you go in here, you're dissecting some tissues, you're doing your job, you're keeping your mouth shut. It's very simple. I thought I was going into an organ harvesting job actually for fallen soldiers, and it was the opposite. It was just a bunch of different tissues from unearthed origin, which I did not know. And every quarter I would get a upgrade in my clearance, which led me to be this person I am today, where, oh my goodness, now you're going to work on this full body extraterrestrial of unearthed origin, where I get the data of where it came from, why I'm doing this. But yet, you can't go in there until you are inoculated with the genetic DNA of that being. And that is because it's a self-destruct mechanism that the extraterrestrials have to protect them from, to protect their culture and their race from humans duplicating their DNA.
how did it change you consciously, spiritually, to go through that experience, to actually have experienced what you've gone through? I mean,
it had its ups and downs. You know, it was hard, and it was fun, and it was you know, just like life. You know, you have your good days and your bad days, but they were mostly good. And all I can say is, you know, my family and we grew up on a farm, and we had chickens and cows, and I used to hunt squirrels and slaughter them and keep their furs. And, you know, I remember doing this process at a very young age, by the way, you know, skinning and cutting chickens' heads off and cleaning them and dipping them in the water and pulling their feathers out and doing this stuff. And I just remember one time that a being came in, and I was looking at the being, and when I touched it, even through my special suit I had, you know, I knew the exact temperature, okay? On these suits, when I touch something, it'll tell me on a heads-up display exactly what the temperature is of this being. It tells me the air quality, the atmospheric pressure that's in this, you know, containment unit, this operating room. And I just was like, wow, I can feel the heat through my very sensitive gloves. And it felt, honestly, like it was a fresh kill. And something triggered in my heart chakra and said, this being was not, you know, killed or destroyed naturally. Something was traumatic with this. And I was taken by this. And at that point, you know, 4 years into it, I just said, okay, I'm good with this. I said, I'm gonna, you know, put in my letter of resignation. And of course I did, and I was honorably discharged.
Did you ever sign the Non-Disclosure Act? Did you ever sign an act of secrecy, of oath, that you couldn't talk about this?
They did back then, and this is in the early years when I first went in, and this happened in January of 1981. They did a special facial recognition system and handprint and a swab from the body with my DNA. And with my handprint, I had to agree to that assignment. And that was basically signing my life away and anyone that knew me, their life away, as well as family members, if I were to ever come forward. And I come forward today now because all my family and all my friends and all my loved ones are dead, which they did follow through with very specifically, including my dog 3 months ago that they said they were going to kill, and they did ahead of time. So that being said, yeah, I did do that, and I did sign that, and they also broke into my home and stole a lot of data that I had that I probably maybe should not have had. But at the same time, you know, there's no reason for any of us to be, you know, hurting each other or doing anything like that. But the thing they always say is, you know, here's the bullet, and they write your name on the bullet when you put your handprint and facial identification down. And they said, this is your bullet. And they put it in a manila envelope, and they write your name on it with your social security number. They said, this bullet's always here waiting for you. And I found that bullet one day, a similar bullet, actually, not that exact bullet, on my countertop when I came forward as a message.
With the years that you worked in this place, were you living a normal life on the outside?
Oh, absolutely. I was a young kid, new in the military, active duty, you know, having a great time, you know, making big money. So I got my motorcycle and my 4x4 truck, and, you know, a lot of my fellow airmen were a little surprised that I had a lot of nice things, but I was doing double duty. I was working active 8 hours a day or more, and then going at night and working another 8 to 12 hours.
But how hard was it to keep that secret? I mean, that would have...
It was simple. I wouldn't want to tell anyone, and I was fine, because I knew I was very serious back then, very loyal, and there's no way I was going to tell anyone what I was doing. I was so intrigued about the work I was doing that it actually became an addictive thing that I wanted to leave my normal job early to get to this job and, you know, be treated like someone that was, you know, respected. Because you have to understand, I was only an E5 sergeant. So, you know, to be part of a project with billion-dollar equipment and to have all these people like dressing me, like literally putting a suit on me, helping me, respecting me, and, you know, physicians coming up to me asking my opinions on things was more gratitude than, you know, being a low military grade cadet, being, you know, as a surgical tech or a surgical first assist or paramedic that I did on the outside, you know, and I respected that. And it had a lot of training behind that of course you cannot learn from any university or anything else. You know, I have 978 credit hours, you know, because of this this training, you know, which a lot of people would, you know, put into like maybe 3 PhDs or something. And, you know, I wasn't into that. I just wanted to know more. I wanted to learn more. I wanted to be part of the projects more. I wanted to see more craft. And of course, I was a techie, so a lot of the cool technology they had down there, you know, you have to understand, while I was in there in the early 90s, you know, we had beepers. Cell phones really weren't out yet, you know, except those big block ones, you know. So to have these, you know, iPads already in 1990 and utilizing these really cool technologies of 3D holographic imaging that you can blow up anything in front of you just from this little small flexible piece of polycarbonate plastic was amazing for me.
So where did Steven Greer fit into this? How did you get associated with Steven Greer?
Steven Greer.
And if you don't want to talk about it, you don't have to.
No, I love Steven Greer. Basically what had happened was I got out of these projects and I didn't want people to know who I was, but yet I wanted a family. I wanted to meet more people likewise that were reaching out, you know, and you have to understand this is, you know, a long time ago where, you know, internet's new, everything is new, all this, you know, kind of communication of reaching out to find people. And I was sitting in bed and I was kind of sad and I just looked up at my star people and I just said, hey guys, like, you better introduce me to some likewise people because I can't be here anymore unless I can talk to, you know, people that are on the same conscious level. And that night I did a meditation under my pyramid and I fell asleep and woke up in the middle of the night and just stood out of bed, went to the computer and typed something, and I typed on Google and there was this, you know, C-SETI popped up in Greer. So I just looked at it and that was the signal I got from above and said, hey, this is a good start. So I contacted them and saw what they were into. Since I had a background with extraterrestrials, a background with connecting with extraterrestrials in a government fashion, I was like, let's see what the civilians are doing. I said, I did my own investigation and I went to this, you know, first CE5 in Crestone, Colorado, had an amazing event. It was beautiful. You know, he was doing the right meditation techniques and he was, you know, he was legitimate is what I'm getting at. You know, it was real. And it wasn't some sort of facade or anything that I've seen on many of these other, you know, proclamation of people on there. So I said, okay, let's do this. And I did it and had a great time. And before you know it, I was vice president of C-SETI within just a year. And then he contacted me and asked me to do the autopsy on the Atacama being. I said I'd be more than happy to. He says, we're gonna make a movie here called Sirius, a documentary. Can you help out with that? I donated, gave $350,000 of my own money and 2 years of my own time to dedicate towards the movie, which, you know, became a top 5, 10 iTunes, top 5 on Netflix and iTunes for 8 months, and was the world's largest crowdfunded movie ever made.
Yeah, it was.
Through my contacts and through you know, other individuals that were included on that, and you know, so I was part of something now.
But did he know about your background?
No, he did not know my background. He did not. He knew about my scientific background. He knew of my medical background, you know, of course, but he did not know of my classified background. I would not allow that to be resurfaced because I had, at the time, a couple of these zero-point energy laboratories running And I knew that he was really into this free energy stuff, which I was just doing, as a hobby. And I didn't want that to be a factor. I wanted people to like me just because I was a new guy there. I didn't want to tell them and brag about what I did or do anything. I was the observer, you know. Yeah. I was just like an ET would come to the planet and observe, what are they doing, what's going on. And he knew this. We had a great telepathic communication. We had great contact experiences. And I had a family member, a couple of my family members were really sick at one point after I, finished and completed Sirius the documentary. So I decided to resign and go my own way.
What is the agenda of whatever compartmentalization that you were in at the time? What was the agenda going on there, really?
That was confusing because here I am working on all these tissue samples and bodies and craft and devices that were of unearthed origin and archaeological discoveries that were amazing. And I wasn't allowed to ask too many questions. If my job was to take a sample, or if my job was to go, investigate this or that or the other, that's all I could do. And I'm not allowed to do anything else but report on what my duty was for that day. And you stick to that. And you don't ask. Because if you ask, then you're asking to be cut out. And it's all about doing what you're told, and that's all you got to do. Yeah. And things will go good. And after a couple of years, oh my goodness, I was seeing craft in just 2 years of my experience, which was probably the most amazing experience that I ever had. Was working on a being, having the genetic profile come back, and then being called upon to take a shuttle, that travels at 700 miles an hour through the center of the earth to an undisclosed location to say, well, this is the craft the being was on.
Obviously, you're talking about this now, and it's amazing what you're saying, and I really appreciate you giving us this ability, time just to speak to you. How do you know any of these memories that you've got are actually your memories and not something else?
Yeah, I get this a lot because that can happen to anyone.
Yeah.
Okay, they can reprogram you, they can erase your memory. The only thing that I have is documentation to prove this, which Michael Sala actually approached me, and I was really nervous because, I know, he can slam you and slam your credibility pretty quick. Yeah. And he's a great, vetter. He can vet anyone, and he's done this in the past to a lot of insiders and people have come forward. David Wilcock already knew me. He already talked to the NSA and CIA. Greer did a huge background check on me, so they knew I was legitimate, but they didn't know what I was doing. But they knew that I had a clear record. I was in the Air Force for this amount of time. So I came forward with Michael Sala for the first time and just said, here you go. Here's 500 pages. This is what I did. There's a few pages in here that tells of my classified stuff, sure, which I saved, thank goodness, that were not stolen from me. Everything else was stolen from me, by the way. They broke into my house. I don't know if you know about this, but you can read up on it online. And they took a lot of my computers and hard drives and things that I've actually had since the days I was in there, which is very upsetting, but at the same time, it all probably happened for a reason, because I'm hoping that someone's going to sell that on eBay and bring it out someday, and then everyone's going to know about these classified documents and things that I had saved from the projects. So I'm the only person out there that I'm aware of that actually has the credentialing to back it up, and the letter of recommendations from the generals and colonels of what I did, and the ID badges from all these places I worked in, and everything else. I don't know any other insider actually that came forward that's still alive that had brought this documentation forward.
Is there any sort of spiritual aspect to all this, do you think? Is there?
Well, of course. I mean, it's the ascension, it's the becoming one with everyone, and the communication process, and being able to cherish everyone, and everyone meaning all living beings, not just humans, okay, not just extraterrestrials, but every other living faction of anything that could emit energy, which is plants and animals and whales, and the ocean is alive. Okay, Gaia is a living creature. It's a, it's this amazing thing that people don't understand has its own frequency.
Would you be surprised if they talk about past lives, future lives, I think they're all happening at the same time actually, they're happening now, all lives are happening now. Would you be surprised if one of your lives or many of your lives was off planet? Because I
have many lives, and I am here, but I'm also a lot of other places. And what that means is, even in the scientific community with the underground facets of the stuff I worked with, there's actually one time we took the consciousness of one human being and put it into 10 clones, 10 shells. And that one person was seven people. We're all 7 people.
Was there any differences?
No, there was no any differences. They were that person. Each individual was not split up and, this one was retarded, this one wasn't. This is what happened. They were all real, the same exact person. And this happens interdimensionally and multidimensionally on a cosmic level through the entire universe.
Were you delving into things there that were even beyond understanding to a point? I mean, that doesn't...
What?
Well, that kind of nature of reality...
It's very hard. That's a whole nother documentary that we have to do.
Yeah, I mean, that's just mind-blowing. What is the most important message of your work right now, would you say?
I need to get back in the laboratory I have a couple devices that are going to help the energy crisis and help, cure people of very simple diseases. And my wish is just honestly to clean up the planet, the oceans first, which I can do with under a year. I mean, with the technology that I've already invented, the technology that a lot of my colleagues know I have that is in very safe places, that, we can do this. It's just, we want to be able to do it without getting killed, and that means working with different organizations and factions and the 300 major corporations to make sure everyone benefits from it. And there's a way to do that. We don't have to say, oh, we hate them or we hate these or, no. Come on, let's all meet up. Let's talk about this. There's a way to meet halfway, okay? There is a type of moderator that can get involved that we can do this. So you're happy, I'm happy, we're going to do this. It's not all one way like everyone thinks it is. I don't believe in that. There is hope for the entire planet, the Earth, for us to clean up the oceans, to make sure every human being has water and food for the rest of their life, and shelter, and proper medical that does not make your body worse, and pharmaceuticals that make your body, to make it better, to increase longevity, to increase creativity, to increase the love of the universe and the planet, which we were designed to do in the beginning.
And that which you've got in your lap there as well.
Oh, it's my sunglasses. Well, I had a paper printed at Stanford, and my name's on it with 11 other physicians. And this happened to be the being that, this is a replica, by the way, of the Atacama being. And there's a lot of controversy about this being, and we're going to go over that. I'm writing a white paper now to explain, the ins and outs of that. But the main thing is, Stanford printed a paper, and this said it was human, and the first paper said it was not, and it is. They told the truth. Stanford told the truth of the data that they received.
That's interesting. Right.
Now, there are other colleagues out there that were, they're trying to check this out. They're trying to say, hey, this doesn't make sense. And you know what? They're right, too. Can you imagine everyone fighting in the planet about something like this or anything, and you're both right because you don't have the right intel? You weren't actually there the whole process like I was. And you have all this on your shoulders, and you're like, well, we don't want to upset anyone. Like, who's telling the truth? They all are telling the truth. But just because you have disinformation doesn't mean that you have the right to attack anyone. You should, instead of attacking, you should lift it up and say, well, let's test this more if you don't believe in it. You know, or let's answer these questions that these scientists have.
That's right, because there's some form of truth in everything, isn't there?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to get to the masses, because the biggest freaking problem is no one trusts anybody. For good reason, because we've been lied to our entire freaking lives. And I might know all the answers, but who's going to listen to me when I don't exist? I'm just one guy here. You know, but we need to get this out. We got to educate the children. We got to educate everyone of all the possibilities and truths. And when you get teams like this together to, you know, pick apart something as, you know, as simple as hunger on the planet. I mean, it kills me to know, and I've been to third world countries, that, you know, these people are dying by the thousands every day, you know, just because they don't have 7 tablespoons of rice to keep them going. I mean, you know how much food we make? You know how much room there is on a planet? There's no overpopulation. We can live really well with the planet. You know, we have to live with the planet. We have to live with the oceans.
Well, I mean, I always say it's a spiritual solution as well, do you know what I mean, as much as anything.
It is, and it's a path that we're going on.
Yeah.
You know, we have to follow the path, and we're all going on these different pyramid levels of consciousness and to the one. But I came here to do something else.
You did.
And that's what I'm going to do.
You definitely did, and I think your path is just becoming a little bit clearer to me as well, what you're trying to do. And I appreciate what you're trying to do as well. And I know there'll be other interviews that we do as well. I know this was just an odd ad hoc one, do you know what I mean? I would have done my research normally, but this has been fascinating. And I'd like to come see you again in Colorado at some point.
Absolutely.
Most definitely.
Thank you, Kevin, for having me.
Brother, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate that. Thank you.